I'm the wrong one to ask.
Garlic corn wings, and then I need like a boneless situation.
Because I am boneless we have now.
I know.
We have tenders, yeah.
Well, tenders, it's the same. It's fine. I will work with tenders.
That's what
we'll leave on tender bones.
All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
Here's Johnny.
Vanity. Definitely my favorite sin.
I am the devil, and I am here to do the devil's work.
The power of Christ compels you!
This is my boomstick!
What's your favorite scary movie?
Good evening and welcome to Shiver, a horror movie podcast. I am your host, David, and with me, not as usual, but as more or less usual, is possibly our favorite guest host, Ish, from the Better Let Me Tell You podcast. Welcome back, Ish.
Thank you. You're only saying it because it's true.
I am only saying it because it's true. And as you can tell, Daniel's not with me, so Ish is going to kind of fill that co-host spot. And our
big shoes to fill.
Yeah, I think so. Certainly bigger shoes to fill than mine because I'm a teeny tiny person. But with us as our guest host today is someone who is near and dear to my heart, my beautiful wife, Stephanie.
Yay!
Really make me uncomfortable.
So welcome. So a little bit of background here. Steph was supposed to be on Shiver about 2 years ago. I had finally convinced her to be on, and she was going to do the Scream episode. You can go back and hear that episode. Stephanie is not on it. Unfortunately, didn't happen that night. But you're on here tonight because you are amazing friends with Ish, and Ish is amazing friends with you. And when
I told somebody this past weekend that Ish was our unicorn.
If ever there was a unicorn, it would be Ish. Yeah,
like Jesse in this movie.
Well, and that's kind of what led me to ask Steph if she wanted to be on this episode, because as you can tell, we are discussing A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, which, by the way, we haven't talked about any Nightmare on Elm Street movie on the show yet,
that's
which is
like, to me.
It boggles my mind. I don't know how that's happened. It must
so
be.
Why are we starting with 2 then?
Because Ish is here to continue our summer fan fest, and Ish was between part 2 and part 4, and so Ish told me, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, personally, I think part 4 is a better movie, but part 2 might be more interesting to discuss." And this is fun. And this is why I was telling you, Steph, like you might want to be on this episode, is because A Nightmare on Elm Street 2 has gained a cult following for being, quote, the gayest horror movie of all time.
It was pretty gay, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
It was pretty gay.
So to have the woman's perspective, but also like the perspective of a gay man to discuss this with me, I felt like, well, it's a no-brainer. Let's talk about A Nightmare on Elm Street 2.
Yeah. So also, they always bring me on, Steph, whenever there's a gay horror movie or like there's penis
like
on screen.
That's homophobic.
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna write save.
You should.
Just a letter. I'm going to. Yeah.
You should. It's fine though, because Ish says all the time, like, I am a gay man.
It's true.
Yeah. Well, it's yeah. I am married to a gay man. Go ahead and write that letter and publish it, because any publicity for Shiver, I'll take.
Listen, the only bad publicity is your obituary. So.
That's right.
And even then, if you have an
estate.
So. Yeah. So before we move on, something that we ask of all of our first-time hosts here, Steph, what got you into horror?
I feel like I was desensitized to a lot of things at like a very early age. I grew up with my dad's a big horror guy, and like and my dad and my brother routinely watch a lot of shitty movies. Like love shitty movies. It's like kind of their thing. But I saw like Hellraiser when I was like 9, And my mom used to travel a lot on business, and when my mom was out, like my dad kind of let us do whatever we wanted. And then like I routinely, so like I saw Poltergeist when I was like probably 5 or 6. I saw The Shining when I was really young too, and it never really scared me. The only stuff that really ever did scare me, which kind of still does scare me, because it's like, you know, growing up Catholic trauma is like anything that's like possessions or like that has to deal with like the church. Like The Exorcist was always really scary to me, and like those kinds of movies. But I love a slasher. I love camp. I love, you know, so like that's something that the Nightmare on Elm Street movies do really well, and all these like slasher movies do very well. So it's never been scary to me. It's just always been fun. You and I have been going to horror nights for like 20 years. It's something that we just enjoy, and it's hard to scare me, like to really, really scare me.
I agree. There's very few times that we've I think seen a horror movie where you've been scared, but you enjoyed a lot. And I do think that it's something that is like important-ish to our I'm speaking to ish as well as saying important-ish to our relationship, because like going back to like some of the very first dates that we went on years ago, like we were always watching horror movies in theaters, always going to Halloween horror nights every year. So like horror is something that I think, you know, helps us gel.
It's fun.
Yeah, and it is a unifying thing.
The last thing that really scared me, like for real, like that not scared me so much as in like kind of fucked me up a little bit, was that one episode of Haunting of Hill House with the tall man. Like I still think about that and I get creeped out to the point, to the, like when we went 2 years ago to Horror Nights and they had that house, I couldn't see that room. I've been waiting for it. So I put my head to the floor and I was like, I couldn't, because I knew I wasn't gonna. That was the last time that I was like genuinely scared by something in media. Was that I don't know why that particular thing scared me so much. Maybe I should talk to my therapist about it. But that specific ghost from Hill House really like took me out, and that I had been kind of on pins and needles the whole house, because it did kind of follow the sequential order of the show. And I was waiting for it and they kind of like skipped over it and he was right at the end. And I was like, no, this is where we're done. And then just like kind of left.
Yeah. And actually, now that I think about it, this is the first time that you've been on Shiver 2.0, because you were on the original iteration of Shiver.
Like the 3rd episode or something.
Yeah. And you did High Tension.
I did High Tension, which is my favorite movie to hate on.
Yeah, well, for good reason. And you were also on the 2-part episode where we discussed
we
the
talked
Haunting
about
of Hill House.
Yeah, I think I talked about, I went in depth about like why, not why, but like that I was so fucking terrified about from that thing.
Well, Mike Flanagan is a genius, you know. So there's that. Like you don't have to put a disclaimer there. It's fine. It's okay to be scared. And talking about being scared, let's get into the movie we're discussing today. So A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. This comes like just a year after the original Nightmare on Elm Street. Elm Street is a huge hit, right? Wes Craven, of course, is brilliant. He is like one of the founding fathers of modern horror. But he's not involved in this at all. He wanted nothing to do with it after he read the script. Okay, so that's kind of what I was talking about here. Now we don't want to discuss this in relation to the previous one, or part 3, or anything that comes after it. But how does this movie work for you as, number one, just a movie on its own, but number 2, within the context of A Nightmare on Elm Street? So Steph, you can start here.
I mean, aside from just the fact that like they live in Nancy's old house and like it's Freddy, like there's not really a whole ton of relation to the first. I can tell a lot about a movie because I am like older. I have a lot of responsibilities. So if there's if I'm not doing a million things while something is on, like that means that I'm like into it and I'm paying attention. And I was doing things. I was working. I was like, Link came in at some point and like saw half the movie with us. Whatever.
I think it was more than half the movie. We were only about 20 minutes in.
He's like, "Can I watch it?" And we were like, "Okay."
Okay. Yeah,
he's already got trauma. He's fine.
He does. He does. Yeah, he sees his therapist. I'm sure he's going to talk to his therapist.
He's 9 and he's in therapy. It's fine. We're healing as our children are healing. That's what we're doing.
Right. We're healing together.
Yeah. But I mean, like, other than that, I mean, thematically sort of, I guess. But I mean, I didn't really find it to be like super deeply related. Like that first, I think it's also like, again, not to like compare, but that first Nightmare on Elm Street is like, it's just so iconic. It like was so groundbreaking for the genre. You know, I even enjoyed the reboot. I know a lot of people did it. The remake of it in 2010 or whatever it was. I really liked it. But I don't know. It no me cogió la atención.
Yeah.
Didn't pull you in.
Didn't pull me in. It did not pull me in. I did not have a blade hand pull me in.
Ish, what about you?
So I enjoyed this movie, as we all know from my times on this show. I love bad movies, so I'm always going to enjoy a movie that's not quote unquote good, right? Like in the mainstream. So I enjoyed the movie on its own. What I will say I found interesting was in the context of the Elm Street portfolio. I don't know. It was interesting in that this was the first movie that, even though it's different than all the others, there's parts of it that still have made it through into the rest of the series. Like, this is the first one where you have to start building on the mythology, because now it's not just a slasher. It's like a slasher, and now he's back, and this is his new motivation, and this is how we have to get rid of him now. And then in each subsequent movie, you see that as well, right? Or it's just like, no, but now you've got to go and take it to the princess's castle and, the last level of Mario or whatever. Exactly. Yeah, your princess in another castle, and it's Freddy. But even something like the whole crux of this movie is that Freddy wants to come into our world, and he needs somebody to help, create the scares and all that. That is the plot of Jason versus Freddy.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so if you really, again, looking back, hindsight 2020, this movie really did do a lot of the heavy lifting and the groundwork that the rest of the series wound up running with, and it doesn't necessarily get the credit for it.
I agree. I think that there's a lot in this movie that works, and I think that there's a lot in this movie that doesn't work. And I think
there's a better movie in there.
I do think there's a better movie in there, but I also think it kind of suffers from that, like the Last Jedi syndrome, which is like, is the movie good? Maybe not.
No.
But is it as bad as it seems when you sandwich it between two other stories that kind of make it irrelevant? And I think that that's kind of where this movie really suffers, is that A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 really picks up the story where the first one leaves off. And we never hear about Jesse again. We never hear about any of these characters again. And so it kind of just serves as almost like a Halloween 3, where it's like, okay, what's the one without Michael Myers? So is it worth the watch? A lot of people just skip over it because Michael's not in it. But there is substance here. I think there's a good movie in here somewhere. And it's I don't think it's a bad movie. Right. But I do think it's
Steph mentioned the reboot in the 2000s. This almost could have been like a proto reboot.
And I think it's because they didn't really understand where they wanted to take the series. And that's why part 2s are so important. Because this does dare to do something different than, say, Friday the 13th part 2. Because Friday the 13th part 2 was exactly the same as the first one, except now the killer was not Pamela Voorhees, it was Jason Voorhees. That's the only difference between the first one and the second one, and really even the third and fourth one. They are exactly the same movie. That's part of what I like about Friday the 13th, is that it's almost like comfort movie. When I'm feeling down in the dumps, I know that I can put on Friday the 13th and I can see Jason kill some naked teenagers, and that's fine. So
it is cleansing.
It is a little cleansing. The way that he needs to cleanse his machete after plunging it right through. Oh no, it was an arrow. that went through Kevin Bacon's throat. So as we move on, and we're starting to touch upon this a little bit in a section that we're going to call LGBTQ, Freddy's Coming for You. Let's get into the story here, right? And of course, you cannot talk about the story in this movie without talking about the fact that, like, it's queer. This is a gay story, right? And it was written this way. It was maybe not directed this way, because if you listen to interviews, the director says that he was not aware of any like gay subtext here, but it was certainly acted that way, and it was kind of understood by many of the people that were making this movie that this was a gay story. So so Ish, I'm gonna kick this to you first. What does the story do for you? Does it work for you? And on what level?
So first, I'm gonna give you props for transitioning to this by saying an arrow through Kevin Bacon's throat, because if that's not subtext, I don't know what is. But
thank you.
But,
not just a hat rack.
I see that. So the story here is again, it's that hindsight 2020. You look back on it. Mm-hmm. The story to me is so fascinating because it's, number one, it's a final boy, not a final girl, right? The roles are reversed because so that's Jessie, the girlfriend Lisa. Mm-hmm. In many respects, it's weird because she acts as the guy and the final girl, right? In some ways, right? You can argue that the budding relationship is actually by Jessie and I forget his friend's name.
Yeah, Grady.
Mm-hmm. Who I have questions about that entire, like, those two form a bond over the span of like 3 weeks. That is because they kind of start off as not enemies, but like adversaries in school, and then all of a sudden they're having lunch together, and then all of a sudden he's the only person Jessie can go to depend upon to not turn into Freddy. I was like,
when you meet your soulmate, you just know.
I mean, I guess there's that. Yes, yeah. Some would say that's a little love.
I think that's using the term soulmate, but okay.
Dream boy would be more appropriate
for
this franchise.
And Grady was fairly dreamy.
Yeah, let me tell you something.
Yeah,
great, and Grady still holds up. I saw him in the documentary that Mark Patton did called Scream Queen. Mm-hmm. Great documentary, talks about all this stuff. So he can still get it, but but I think that the story works because it's not overt. Mm-hmm. Right? I think that if this was, and again, this is one of those things where, like, if it was to be remade today, would it still have the same impact? Because I think today it would have to, like, off the bat, Jessie would be a gay character.
Yeah, that's the only way it would work, because then you can't. It has to be more obvious.
In 2023, it just has to be. But I think back then, that's why it works, because it's playing with a lot of tropes and it's subverting norms, and so it's not just beating you over the head with things. Even Freddy, I mean, you want to talk about the original pansexual, like Freddy Krueger, because he is, for all intents and purposes, seducing that boy in the kitchen when he's, the first time they come face to face.
Yeah.
I mean, there's even a scene in the documentary where Robert Englund had originally wanted to play the scene, putting one of the knives like in his mouth, and one of the people on set was like, "You can't do that. It looks like you're putting a dick in his mouth." And he and Englund was like, "Well, yeah, yes,
that's the point.
That's what I'm doing." Yeah. But I think it works because of the time and place that it was in. I think.
Yeah, well, and you're right. It is subtext. I mean, it's not the text. I was trying while you were talking about that. I was thinking, like, how would Ryan Murphy make this today?
And it would person to do that with, though. I think
the ending wouldn't make any sense, and it would just be a slapdash anyway. So
yeah,
right. But it would be so in your face that I think that it would be the story instead of it being a part of the story.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways,
like Max Greenfield would play Jesse, or Matt Bomer, or one of those. Like,
in a lot of ways, I think this is more interesting because then it leads to the discussion about it instead of, because in my opinion, like, story is not necessarily interesting to talk about, but context and subtext is. Right. And that's where this movie really shines. Anything else did you want to touch on?
No. I was actually going to say, like, I mean, Steph, as a gay man, how did you feel about, this particular story? Like,
I mean, Dave was telling me that the whole thing about, like, not the director, but the writer maybe writing it, and the history with the actor, that he really, like, his career, like, never went anywhere after this because it was so, it was so, like, taboo for the time to, like, do something like this. I kind of wish it wasn't so ambiguous. I would have liked it to be a little bit. I would have liked them to lean into it. I get that it's the 80s and, like, it wasn't.
This is what, 83?
85, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, so like,
AIDS crisis is in full swing.
Yeah, and so I get why for the time it was, like, very taboo or whatever, but I think that, like, I would have liked to see a little bit more, and I think that the, like, part of what horror has done a lot in general is kind of address these topics, like, subtly and not so subtly. And I would have just liked, like, a hint of not so subtle. The when he's dancing in his room, like, that is the gayest shit I've ever seen. That's very Britney Crossroads. Like, it's very,
that scene.
Every little girl's had that moment.
Yeah.
For Christ's sake, he pops the little cork thing at the end. I mean, like, it is, and not just that. I mean, when we're talking about, the character, like the actor, I think, understanding the movie that we're making here, and I don't want to jump the gun, Dave, because I don't know if you've got, like, another section for this, but the first time you're introduced to Jesse, he not only is getting out of bed in his underwear, he adjusts
himself.
Yeah. In his underwear, he reaches in, adjusts himself, and there is nary a boob in this movie, but there is lots of bare-chested boys in the background at PE class. There's bare ass. There, you know what I mean? So
leather
it's
daddies.
Also, there's leather daddies, and thank you for that. You know what I mean? It's again, it's that thing of, like, this movie knows what it's doing, but it's not. It's overt when you look back on it through.
Yeah, in hindsight, yeah.
And it's
at the time, I'm sure nobody, like, really paid attention that much.
Right. And it's overt when you look at it in big picture. Because, like, as a dude, one of the first things I do when I get out of bed is adjust myself.
Yeah, that's a really. I mean, like, I don't have a penis, but I've seen people do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very natural thing to do, because
that's what you do.
It just moves around, and you got to make yourself comfortable. So, like, it's not an not normal thing. Every person who has a penis does this, right? That's not a gay thing. But when you look at the fact that this is how they're introducing the character is with him playing with a penis, even if it's his own penis, right? It's putting in your mind the idea that, okay, well, I think the cock's gonna kind of figure into the story somehow.
Yeah, we normally get, like, a boob shower scene in the first 5 minutes,
or at least scantily clad,
right.
Some type of
Yeah, and nothing. So I agree. I think that because this movie is so subtle, but the thing is that it's a collection of subtlety. It's so much subtlety that by the time the movie's over, it's like you were assaulted with gay iconography the whole time, because you were, in fact, assaulted by gay iconography the whole time. And to me, that's part of why this movie works, because you can watch this movie, and if you are even the slightest bit not blind, you'll be able to see this movie for what it was written for. And the way it was written, for many years, he denied that there was any sort of sexual identity stuff going on in this movie. He later did come out and say, like, yeah, like, we were worried about AIDS, and we were being told that, like, it was something that you could get only if you were gay. And so people were afraid.
Right.
Straight guys were afraid, like, well, what happens, like, if I do have a gay encounter? Gay guys who weren't, like, out were worried. I mean, and Ish, you can comment more on this, but, like, that was something
how
that
old
in the
do you
80s,
think I am?
No, I. Well, listen, Sonny, in my day,
He was like 6 years old when this movie came out.
I know.
No, but I know what he means. I know what he means.
You know,
Ish, as our resident gay historian, you would know.
You know, but that's to me, that's what makes this movie interesting, because quite frankly, the majority of these kills are not that interesting when you compare them to any of the other movies. They're not particularly inventive. There are some special effects that are, but you know,
there's really only what three noticeable kills.
Right. Yeah. You know, more people than that die, and I'm grateful for that. Yeah. But that sounded weird. But
never ever have that taken out of context.
But it's to me, really, it's about this story because the characters are the characters, with the exception of Jesse and what he's going through. You know, moms and dads are moms and dads. You know, little sisters are little sisters. Boyfriend, you know, girlfriends who, you know, maybe you would like to trade in for the boyfriend are that, you know, and that's, to me, what is really fascinating about this story. This is why I think I would recommend this movie.
Yeah,
it wouldn't necessarily be for anything else, because I think a lot of the problems that Wes Craven had with the script are the same things that kind of bring this movie down. There are silly points in this, like the bird that just, you know, incinerates. You know, it spontaneously combusts. I don't understand why.
There are people in the Birds who panic less than that family did over a parakeet in their living room. One parakeet.
Link asked the same thing. He was like,
"Yeah, he did.
What is going on?" And I'm like, "The bird's going crazy." He said, "The parakeet?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Why?" And then he turned to me. He goes, "Why did it explode?" I said, "I don't know." You can't explain it.
He walks in as like Freddy's like pulling the skin off of his head. And, like that's the scene he's walking. He's walking.
He's like, "Oh, cool. Can I watch?"
You know, we're like,
I like that kid.
The other day and had no idea what was happening. So he's, you know.
So, you know, there are things in this, and as cool as I think the scene is, it doesn't do anything for
the plot.
To make Freddy scary. The pool party scene is a scene that I think is memorable, and it's awesome to see him running around slashing people, like just out in the open. But it doesn't really explain how he got there. It doesn't explain.
That was one of the scenes that Wes Craven like specifically names in like having an issue with, where he's like.
But I think at that point he had overtaken Jesse's body, and so it was, in essence, it was Jesse doing all of that.
Right. You know, but then how does Jesse continue to exist after that? You know, like there's all these questions about what exactly.
They become possessed by Freddy or don't. Like you can't.
Right. You know, so you I don't know. And this is the thing, is that we don't know. It might be a Jekyll and Hyde thing. And honestly, I'm okay with it. I don't find anything in this movie to be so offensively bad or so offensively confusing that I'm like, well, no, I can't move past this. There's just points where I think, okay, well, you know, it kind of is what it is. You know, what my favorite Frankenstein movie has a rape scene in it that was inserted by the studio after the movie had been shot because they wanted to make it sexy.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and I was like, "Whoa, what the fuck is?" And you watch
rape is not sexy. Kids.
No, it's not, right? So like, I have a hard time watching this movie, even though it is my favorite Frankenstein movie, because by all accounts, everything else in this movie, it's called Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed. Peter Cushing, 1970 something, right? It's fantastic. Aside from that, you know, but it's one moment in the movie, you know, so it's kind of like that, where I think it's okay. I do like the pool party scene. There's enough in it that works, but also like it doesn't work. I think when you look at this movie as this is the story, this is a coming out story.
Yeah,
that's where this gets really interesting. And as we talk about coming out, you know, it's about Jesse, but there's so many other characters in here, fascinating characters that are not interesting. In a section that we're going to call High School Redo, which characters, good or bad, jumped out at you? There's no limit. You can talk about as many as you want. Steph, I'm going to throw it to you first.
I mean, Lisa is like the obvious one, right? So like that's who we would like think is like our final girl, right? And like to some extent she kind of is. But you're right, Ish, where she kind of plays the role of both. She's like sort of the hero, but she's sort of also the final girl. And I think that is kind of like, I don't know that they maybe wrote her as well as they could have. I mean, obviously they didn't write this because
It's not Shakespeare. Yeah.
but you know, like having her, I always, as a girl, like always gravitate towards female characters anyway. They're the ones that I root for, good or bad, like evil or, you know, altruistic or whatever. So the fact that she's the one that's kind of like guiding him through all of this and kind of telling him about Freddy and like what, you know, the factory scene when they go back to the factory and she's kind of like giving him like the rundown of like why everybody, you know, who he was and like what he did to the kids or whatever. Like she, like they kind of were like co-protagonists.
Yeah.
You know, so which you don't see like a whole ton in horror. Like it's usually like the main person that everybody kind of like.
There's a bit of that in the first one with Nancy and Glenn. You know, they kind of.
No, but I still feel like it's Nancy in the first one.
She is.
Like,
yeah, she definitely is.
Yeah, I mean, I get where Glenn, but for me, Glenn is like Ducky.
Okay.
You know, like
I can see that.
You know, he's the like he's the best friend. He's Kristen Ritter. You know, like he's that person. I don't feel this way about Lisa because I feel like she's a little bit more important to the overall story.
He would have no idea what's going on without her.
Right, exactly. As most men do.
Even gay men.
Even gay men. I'm also going to throw a little shout out to their coach, who he finds him in like a gay fetish club.
Right.
Which, you know, what is this kid like? You know, I mean, I don't know how old you're supposed to be when you go to your first gay fetish club, but you know.
Emily Post says you should be. I will want to talk about for like 17 hours about that leather club. That is.
I knew you would. That's why.
First of all, it was a real gay club in LA at the time.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Was it?
It was, and
man, Indiana looked. David said it. We were watching Indiana. Looked a lot like LA, wherever they're supposed to be.
But I love the fact that it was called Dawn's Bar, D-O-N as in Nancy's bar, right? But if you're not really paying attention and you're looking at it, and it's a leather bar. It says like it looks like it's Dom's bar, like it's the bar for all the Dom tops,
like
or whatever. Like and so I was like, wait, what the fuck does that say? I'm like, did anybody even?
Like that's not subtext. That's just
text, but it's not what it was. And what I love about it is that it was a leather bar, but almost no one in there was wearing leather.
Yeah,
they were just weird. It looked like if somebody had taken all of like the background characters in your typical episode of Gem and the Holograms and then just made them reality, because they all just look like what some cartoonist notion of a punk rocker would be, and they were just like the weirdos at the club, whatever. Also,
you know what it reminded me of was the bar where Large Marge drops off Pee-wee.
Oh my God, yes!
Yes.
And I could have sworn that like half of those extras were also in Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and that's the same year it came out. Like I have a feeling like they just walked down to Tim Burton's set, was like, "Hey, could you spare an extra or two?"
Maybe they just like they didn't have a big budget, and they were just like, "Hey, we need the bar for like an hour."
They're like, "We'll pay you just like $100. Just let us, you've already got the lighting equipment in there." But then I'm also kudos also to this bartender who doesn't even bother to ask Jesse his age.
Not at all.
Oh, he doesn't.
But wasn't the drinking age lower?
It was 18, but I mean, you didn't know that. I mean, to me, I think Mark Patton was in his 20s when he did the movie, but he doesn't look old. It's not like he's like, it's not like Luke Perry on 90210.
But that is something that sticks out at people, because even Link, when he saw this, he was like, "Wait, how old do you have to be to drink?" Like that registered for him. Like, is that, he asked, he goes, "What is he drinking? Is that beer? Is he old enough?"
He did say that.
And I was like, you got it.
Raising a responsible child. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Or one that's very cognizant of alcohol. I don't know.
He's like, he does like the little notches in his bedroom, like the jail, the years before he can have a drink.
If you move his bed, it's like a hole.
It's just like 5 more years. But you know who I could not stand though in this movie? Okay, there was two people. Number one, I couldn't stand her best friend or her girlfriend, whatever her name was.
Okay, yeah. Let's see. I have this up here.
The wet hair. Like, I was annoyed. She was not a good actress. Her hair bothered me. Like, just
Carrie, was it?
Sure.
Yeah, Sydney Walsh, I think, is the actress's name.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah,
that hair had to go. So she just annoyed me because she couldn't act and she had bad hair. But also, let's talk about all the parents in this movie. Even by horror movie standards, which I know parents
I
are
was
not.
going to say, like, why are we complaining about this? Horror movie parents are always fucking terrible.
Okay, hang on a second, because the dad is one of my favorite characters.
Okay, they are the worst.
They are the worst, but this is part of why he's one of my favorite characters.
But can we also chalk this up to, like, white people?
Yeah, no, 100%.
A lot of this is like fucking white people. Like,
white nonsense. Like
it's white
nonsense.
nonsense.
This is white nonsense. A lot of look, half of shit that happens in horror movies is white nonsense. Because like, let's go investigate. Let's go down to the basement. What does that sound like?
Call the fucking cops.
Yeah. Also, we don't have basements, so then
right.
So we're not going anywhere underground, kids. No, thank you.
Well, anyways, say what you were going to say about the parents.
Yeah, no. So like, I mean, look, her parent, Lisa's father, they're literally at a pool party, and the kid's like jumping on a trampoline, and he's like, "Hey, none of that." I'm like, you know what? You put the trampoline there, okay? Yeah. That decision was yours.
Next to a pool and then not expect anybody to use it.
Right, and invite a bunch of teenagers, and they're gonna be like, "No, not the trampoline." So stop with that. Then Jesse's parents, I kind of want to watch them for a while when Jesse's not around, because what the hell, like, what keeps them together? Because
he's hung.
He must be, because
it's got to be something like that.
It's not for the children, because I'm pretty sure they don't really care about the daughter. Like, if he had slaughtered her in their bed, they would have never noticed.
They just don't believe in abortion. That's why she's around.
That's why she's there.
Yeah.
But when Jesse, the father with Jesse is so like, pick a lane. Mm-hmm. When he gets picked up by Lisa, or Lisa comes by in the morning, it's like, Lisa? Who's Lisa? What Lisa? It's like, okay.
You've never met your friend's kids, like, ever. But you know,
they're new. They did just move into the house, so I'll give that. But he seems so concerned that there's like you know, the whore of Babylon just walked in and is about to take his son. Like, and then later on, it's like, is it drugs or whatever? Nobody's concerned when the cops bring him in that he's naked.
That's fair.
Nope. Yeah. And wet. Again, as Latin parents, the first thing would have been like, oh my God, pneumonia. Like that, you know, like you're going to catch pneumonia and die, right?
Like, el sereno te mata.
El sereno would have...
Olvídate la lluvia,
he's lucky the sereno didn't kill him on the way to the cops. You know?
Yeah.
But yeah,
but if the sereno doesn't get him, the Hispanic parents will. Because
exactly, yeah. He would have been like, take me, Freddy, take me now. Like, compared to having to deal with my parents,
with his mother, you know.
With two Latin parents.
For the listeners who are not in South Florida, el sereno is the dew, the morning dew, or the evening dew. Just the dew. It is the dew, not the Mountain Dew, but you know, the dew, the royal dew.
You've heard of Stephen King's The Mist? We're gonna write Jose Marti's The Sereno.
Man, you know, his dad. I love.
Why do you love this guy so much?
Okay, so here's the thing: he is a shit father, but he leans into how shit of a dad he is, and to me, he plays it like satire.
No, there's no way this is intentional.
It is, and here's why. That actor is a really funny actor. All right, Clu Gallagher, who's the actor who plays him, has one of the...
You always name the most random people in the most random things, and I'm like, this is 100%. You just did it before we got on air. Like, I feel like you make like that is not a person's name.
That's his name. His name is Clu Gallagher. Clugallagher.
I'm sure it is. I can probably look it up. But that's not a person's name. It's not a real no person.
That's his name. That's his name, and I'll tell you why I know him.
And what the hell else have you ever seen him in?
Okay, it's the same thing that everyone else who's into horror knows Clu Gulager from, and it's Return of the Living Dead. All right, he is the owner of You Need Medical Supply. You need a medical supply, and that's where the zombie outbreak happens. And he is such a funny actor. Like he eats up the scenery in that movie.
Okay.
That's why I know that what he's doing is satire. And to me, like, I found him hysterical in this movie. You know, particularly that scene with the toaster.
Oh, that's great.
You know, like everyone else would be running out of the fucking house. Like, it's not plugged in. And he's like, and would you believe it? It wasn't plugged in. You know, it's like, you fucking dumbass. Like, something has taken possession of your house, you know, but he's playing it off calm, cool, collected because, you know, the middle class father can't be bothered to do anything.
It's very Silent Generation of him.
It's exactly it's exactly what this is like that dad that you see on TV, right? It's that
like,
to the extreme.
The paper. Yeah,
it's that to the extreme.
Yeah, this is a father who'd rather essentially believe his son is a sociopath who put cherry bombs up a parakeet's ass to make them explode, instead of trying to find another never mind the fact that the parakeet cage was covered. So how long of a fuse does a cherry bomb have before it blows
he's
up
the one who covered
the parakeet? Right.
Yeah. You know, I think he's so funny in this movie, and I think that he's a really underappreciated actor.
The two things you've seen him in, I'll take your word for it.
Well, yeah.
But you're giving me another angle to look at his performance, though. Given what you've just told me about, you know, with Return of the Living Dead, so I'm going to reassess and reevaluate what he's bringing to the table. Maybe he did understand the assignment.
Thank you. He was apparently also in The Initiation, which is another 80s slasher. I have seen that one, but I haven't seen it in a long time. The only thing I remember about that one was Daphne Zuniga was in that.
Oh, yes. Okay, I remember that one.
Yeah. I can't remember what role he played in that one. And it's been years. I can't remember the movie at all anyway. But for me, you know, we touched upon the big ones. Clu Gulager's who I'm going to talk about. You know, I do like Mark Patton as Jesse. You know, he's pretty great. I think that he actually did bring something to this role. I think that he did play it as a coming out story. And I think that that's part of why this movie works in that context. So kudos to Patton. And
you know what he did after, since he never really his career never went out anywhere?
What?
He became an interior designer.
Oh, that's right. I knew this.
Yeah, in Puerto Vallarta.
Huh?
He's in Puerto Vallarta now. He owns like a
is he in Puerto Vallarta?
Really?
Yeah.
I'm like that. You know, if you can't be a gay actor, go be a gay interior designer. Like, I love that journey for you.
I mean, it's a parallel path.
Yeah, it's a pipeline. Some would say.
Exactly. Yeah, but to your point, David, though, I did want to touch on him because I think I actually saw this movie twice in the span of 3 days.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I actually genuinely enjoy watching this movie. Mm-hmm. There were two different scenes where one of them was with Lisa and the other one was with Grady. Like once the whole Freddy thing is happening, where I noticed it's a scene where most actors, especially in quote unquote, you know, B movie horror things, would have been tempted to just go up, like to escalate the scene and have the hysteria build and build and build. And he went the opposite direction. Mm-hmm. You know, he went with instead of I'm scared, he went like scared. He kind of brought it down, and I was like, you know what? That's more believable.
Yeah.
You know, he's as they say, he's making a choice. But I think it's the right one because at no point does he devolve into histrionics or, you know, over the top. He almost plays it like somebody who really is losing their goddamn mind.
And that's what I was going to say is there's one scene in particular with him where I think he's selling me on this. And it's the scene after Grady dies.
Yes.
When he walks into the house and Lisa sees him, right? And Lisa does a really great job there too. Kim Myers is that actress's name. He comes in and he's covered in blood, and he's kind of just muttering to himself. And she first says, "What happened?" And then like a light goes off in her mind, and she says, "You're hurt. What's wrong with you? Right? What happened to you?" And he's like, you see the wheels are turning, but there's no traction. And the way that he's kind of like just like stuttering and moving his hands and stuff. Yeah, this is a guy who's like just experienced trauma. And he did that, I think, really, really well. The only character that we didn't touch upon, and we always do this whenever we have a slasher movie, and we usually reserve this for most killers, most of the big bads, is the villain here, right? So the Freddy Krueger, right? Or is it, right? So Freddy, hindsight's 2020. We've seen all the, Nightmare on Elm Street movies now. We know everything about Freddy. At this time, you only have the first movie and now this second movie to go off of. So, how does Freddy work for you as a villain in this movie, Steph?
I mean, it's hard. It's hard because, like, I personally love Freddy as he's like one of my favorite slasher like dads ever, like one of my favorite horror like villains ever, like I would say. And I kind of, and maybe this is just because like Wes Craven's not involved in this, so like maybe the authentic, there's a certain level of like authenticity that's like missing from it. And this is not like a Robert Englund problem. This is like a writing problem. This is, I mean, I just feel like it was a little bit, I don't want to say like a caricature. I'm lacking a word for it though. It was like more over the top than it probably needed to be. And that happens a lot in like sequels because you're trying to outdo yourself. But like there were it wasn't as, I don't feel like it's as genuine as it was in this one, and then in like the ones that follow it, just because this is just such, it like lifts right out of the series so well. So that's, I mean, the thing, like the tongue thing when they're like hooking up
in the first movie.
No.
Yeah. Oh no, I know. Yeah. Got you. In the pool house.
In the pool house. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say cabana, but it's not a cabana. That's
what
like. And then like the alien like hand thing and like out of like the chest, like those kind of things are like, I get that it's a sequel and we have to do things like bigger and badder or whatever, but like I just there's like a level of, I guess maybe not satire, but I don't know what the word is escaping me right now, but there's a level of like authenticity that's like missing.
But I think it's what you were saying, where like it's the sequel, so okay, I have to top myself. But I think also tying back to what David was saying earlier, because they don't know what Freddy is yet, they don't have the parameters, right, to work within. So they're just, let's just go more, go bigger. But they don't yet understand, I think, the character. I think that may be like what you're.
But that's why I say it's not. I think it's a writing problem.
Yeah.
Because I think I don't think that Wes Craven didn't know who Freddy is. And I think that had he like actually been involved in it, like, or, that we would have a very different film. And we would have like, because I mean, you think, not to make it about Scream, but think about Scream 2 and think about the rules that Randy establishes, right? And he like lays them, so
but
like
Scream 2 also had the benefit of Wes Craven coming back.
Oh,
but even more important than that, it had the benefit of Kevin Williamson coming.
It also has the benefit of coming after all of these movies that have done this a million times. So like, I get it. So like, yes, I'm just saying, like, if you think about the rules that this genre is building, like in this moment in the 80s, like this is where this is really like thriving. And this is where we're really like, it just seems like such a, not an anomaly. It just seems like so out of place. And I really, in my opinion, it's because like Wes is like not involved in this.
Okay. Ish?
I think that's fair. I will say I think this is the last Freddy movie where he was actually scary.
Yes, I agree.
After this, and I love Freddy, like Steph. I Freddy to me is like my.
I was Freddy for Halloween 2 years ago.
Yeah,
but you were a sexy Freddy, weren't you?
She was.
I was also a pregnant Freddy, and nobody knew it.
You barely knew.
I barely knew. I had to.
Yeah.
Love it. So I love Freddy, but I'm the first to admit that one of the reasons I love Freddy so much is because he has the quips and the one-liners, and so he's not a Michael Myers or a Jason, right? He actually has a personality.
Yeah.
And I think
which is one of the best parts about him.
That's what we love about him. Absolutely.
He's not just like even like to the like even someone. I throw everything back to Scream just because that's my favorite thing. But even like Ghostface changes. Ghostface doesn't have a personality. You think he doesn't know. Freddy's like consistent, and I love that about him.
But he's consistent after part 2,
right?
Because in part 3 is when he gains that witty, satirical, sort of quip that he's always fast with. He was really sinister before then.
And I will say,
he's a child molester. I mean, like,
yeah. I mean, he's not good people.
We're not talking about like
But I will say, in this movie, he also works better as a boogeyman than a slasher.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's fair.
And I think it's because what this movie establishes to the benefit of the rest of the series, Freddy doesn't work in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
You can't bring Freddy into the real world. It doesn't work. He becomes limited. And the beauty of Freddy, as established in part 1, is the whole dreamscape. That anything can happen. You don't know what it is. And I think that may be why some of the kills, like you were saying earlier, David,
they're lame.
Are just lame because he's in the real world.
Yeah.
And so that's why I say he works better as.
Wasn't this also like a problem in Jason versus Freddy?
Well, he was weaker in the real world when he was brought into the real world.
Freddy in like 1,000 years. So
yeah,
he was weaker. Yeah. But in this case, he was just a guy with a knife. You know what I mean? Like he was just another slasher. There was nothing interesting to him by bringing him into the real world. So that's why I say like it works better for me when he's like lurking in the shadows and tempting Jesse, because that's scary. That's sinister. That's it's more terror than horror.
Yeah.
It's a fine line, but I know it's there somewhere. So I think Freddy, the part 2 had to crawl so that the rest of the series could run. As far as Freddy,
I agree with that. I think that this is the last time until Wes Craven's New Nightmare that we got a sinister Freddy. He's always diabolical, but he was more of a humorous guy. Almost like Chucky, where I'm gonna hit you with a joke as I push you out this window, sort of thing. But he is really sinister in this, and he is himself scary. I think it's really easy to forget that Robert Englund can be scary beyond like the visage of Freddy with what he does with his voice, with the way that he can approach you slowly in the dark. And this is the last time that you get that. Unfortunately, we don't get a lot of that here. My favorite scene in this movie is the transformation from Jesse to Freddy in Grady's bedroom.
Oh, that's phenomenal.
That scene is incredible, and we're going to get to special effects and kills in just a moment. But that scene works because number one, Jesse's doing a fantastic, like Mark Patton's doing a fantastic job of showing us that he's afraid of what's about to happen. But also because the way that Freddy is about to enter the real world, it's number one, he's coming out, right? But number two, it's terrifying the way that it happens. And it's, I think, the only moment in this movie where you get spectacular special effects. And that plays into it. Like you said, when he's in the real world, what he's going to do is slash you, and
he
that's
bites Lisa on the
cool.
leg.
Yeah, and that's fine. That's cool. But when that happens, the killer is typically this like giant hulking, unstoppable monster. Robert Englund isn't much taller than I am.
No.
And I'm a short dude. So and again, this is one of the issues that Wes Craven had with the movie. He told them, like, why do I want to see?
He says it seems silly. Like he looks like he's that. One of the things about like the pool scene specifically that he mentions is like he looks like one of the other kids, like just running around with them, and he's not intimidating.
Yeah, he doesn't have the stature of someone to intimidate you. And that's part of why that, the first time you see Freddy in Tina's dream in the first movie, right, when his arms go stretching out and he's clawing at the fences and at the trash cans, like that is terrifying. The way that he Tina, like that's awesome. That's fantastic. I don't think we get enough of that here, but it is the last time that we get Sinister stalking Freddy. And to me, there's also more of the child molester that we never really get confirmation of until the reboot, until the remake in this movie, because Craven's original idea was to have him be a child molester. To him, that was the scariest thing that a person could be. But it wouldn't get past the censors. New Line told him, like, yeah, there's no way this is going to get approved. We're not going to get distribution where the killer is a child molester. So he made him a child murderer. Oh, and that they said, okay, well that's a good compromise.
I mean,
think about
no body, no trauma.
I mean, I get it.
And that's it. Is that like it is something that you hear about much more often in the news, and it's more sad than upsetting when it happens.
I mean, I know that it was never really like, I just always kind of felt that way. Like anyway, it was, again, subtext, right? Like this whole movie is about stuff, but it is, even from before the reboot, when I saw this, when I was like 14 or however old I was, like I kind of knew that. I feel like that,
it was implied, inferred.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. As a kid, like I remember being, 6, 7 years old, going to Blockbuster and seeing the posters of, whatever the newest Nightmare on Elm Street was at that time. I knew that Freddy was someone who killed kids, but in my mind, he was the guy that I don't want to approach his van.
Yeah.
And you always got that from him. And I think Robert Englund played him that way. And I think that the time that he is best played as the child molester is in this movie, because the movie is the constant, the perpetual molestation of Jesse. And you can look at it that way. You can also look at it as, Freddy represents his sexuality as the coming out, and that's the beauty of symbolism, is that you can look at it in a myriad ways. And it's always going to be right, because if you're picking it up, it's probably because it might be there. So I do think that there's a lot to Freddy here. Unfortunately, there's not enough of Dream Freddy, which is like the best stuff. And that leads us, I think, to our last section before we rate the movie, which I'm calling Flashy Slashy, the special effects, which is the flash, and the slashy. So we talked a little bit about this, but I want to get a little bit more into this. The special effects, the kills, how did they work in this one? Ish, I don't think I've thrown it to you first in a little while.
So the special effects, I think, they hold up, and I think it's something that y'all have talked about a lot on this show, which is practical effects. Will always hold up better than CGI. Even if you're looking at this movie through the lens of 2023, you may look at it and be like, "Oh, that looks a little cheesier. That looks a little XYZ," but it doesn't look dated in the same way that the Quidditch scene in Harry Potter does, right? Like,
it's so bad. I talk about that all the time. That is like always my standard for like the worst CGI. That, and then the one that I always say still holds up is that first Transformers movie.
Yeah.
That first Transformers movie, like I remember seeing that. We saw it at a midnight showing in Disney, and I was like, those fucking robots are real.
Yeah. Well, that was the game changer, I think. That was 2007. That's the movie that Jon Favreau says showed him. It was like proof of concept, like I can make Iron Man.
Right. But I mean, the practical effects, I will always have a soft spot for practical effects because I think that there's, especially in a horror movie, the visceral feeling that you get, especially going back to the scene you were talking about, where in Grady's room where he's turning into Freddy, you're not going to get that same emotion, that same feeling, that same look, CGI.
No,
you're just not. The fact that they literally had to make a mold of this boy's face with his mouth open so that then Robert Englund could just stand behind it and put his eyeball in it so that they could get that shot, which that shot is, I don't use this word liberally because I'm over the age of 22. That shot is iconic.
Yeah.
And it's so simple, quote unquote, right? Like there's no bells and whistles to it. And to me, that shows that these are filmmakers who showed up with a point of view and who knew what they had to get done. Probably on a limited budget.
Aren't practical effects cheaper?
Yes and no, because you a lot of times only get one or two shots at a bite at the apple.
I guess that's true.
So
it depends on the effect and how many times you have to do it. Because it doesn't cost you anything except man hours to revise a digital effect. But some effects, like for example, blowing up the hospital in the Dark Knight, you get one take at that.
Yeah, you get one shot.
So some of these effects like literally cost millions of dollars to do. Now, an effect like that is not going to cost $1 million, but if you fuck up the face mold, the effect's blown. You got to do it again.
Right.
So usually, but not always.
Right. And then we also touched on this. Not enough slash. Not enough. And then really, you got to go and kill the hot guy and the leather daddy. I mean, really, these are the only two big kills we get.
Especially just like coming off the heels of like the blood bedroom in the first movie,
right.
Like we're coming off of something like that, which that's like probably one of the most iconic horror scenes ever. I'm willing to say, like you're coming off of that, and then you're gonna give us like these lame ass like locker room kills.
Yeah, I mean, who amongst us doesn't want to be tied up to the shower in a locker room? Fair enough. But maybe not spanked. But we're gonna end it there. I don't want the claw marks afterwards. Right. That's
My little claw mark never hurt anybody.
Attacked by balls.
That's we'll talk later. But yeah, and then the pool party scene. I'm pretty sure roughly about 20 children died in that scene, but they died almost off camera. It was
right.
Almost
You don't
like
see it.
He would throw them and then they'd fall, and all of a sudden you saw fire. You're like, oh well, I guess he's dead.
Right.
But why are they spontaneous? Like, why are we combusting? Like, why are we doing this?
Yeah, that was never explained. That
it's
Freddy
not like the thing.
Like his powers or dream powers.
The only thing I can think of is that with Freddy actually dying in the first movie, his soul was in hell and was bringing with him hellfire. That's the only thing that I could try to.
But if you have to think about it that hard, and if you have to go
you're right.
far to like sit there and be like, "Oh, why would this make?" It's shitty. Like it's shitty writing. It's a shitty effect.
It is.
It's
you're right. Yeah.
Because
there's nothing in the movie to suggest that.
There's zero to suggest anything like that.
Yeah. That's headcanon.
And on that note, why did the showers all of a sudden have blood in them? He didn't hook him up to the plumbing.
No.
Right.
Although we'll talk about subtext.
That is probably like, oh, we had a blood bedroom scene in the first one. Like, what are we gonna do to outdo that? Like, here we go, right. blood shower.
Right.
And the thing is, like,
Which could work if you just like flesh it out. Like, it could work if you give me a reason. Like, listen, I'm willing to play by the rules that you're gonna establish, but then don't.
And that's an easy one because you just have to literally impale him on a pipe.
Right. Yeah, and the thing is that they established later in the movie that each of these kills is happening in the real world.
Right.
There's no like dream mechanic here.
Right, but so then who's dying and whose like blood are we funneling into the shower?
Exactly. Yeah.
If you're not dreaming this either. Like that's a whatever.
So Steph, was there any special effect or any kill that worked for you?
I mean, I'm particular to like the ripping off the skin. Like
that's a
really
great
cool
one.
practical effect.
Mm-hmm.
Like brain, just he's falling apart anyway. So
and the brain pulses. It's a really good effect.
I noticed that. I was like, it was like really subtle, and it's at the end. It's like right before they cut, but you see it like pulse, and I was like, that's a detail that like not many people maybe would think about.
Yeah.
So I did notice that, and I did enjoy it. But that's like the one that sticks out to me. I'm like, that's cool. But really, everything else is like mid, as the kids say.
Is that what the kids are saying now?
Yeah, it's mid.
Yeah. And as far as kills, any kill that you liked?
What can you say that hasn't already been said? Like, I mean, Ish is like, there's two major kills. There's your leather daddy kill and the gay love interest. I mean, like,
okay, yeah.
Here we go on like the on what we heard in a horror class 20 years ago. Horror being like the most conservative of the genres.
Mm-hmm.
The two people that we're killing are two people that are like two of the.
They're coded, yeah.
Yeah, they're coded. They're coded characters. So.
So
there's like no. There's. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but there's like no black people in this movie that I remember.
No, I don't think there are.
That's
maybe background character, but that's
like, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's a huge stereotype that like those characters will go first or whatever. So
right.
So who are we taking after that? Because we don't have any.
Right.
They needed a DEI consultant in this movie.
So I will say I do think that the special effects in this movie are great, even if they are limited. The special effects artist here, Kevin Yeager, would go on to direct I think it was Hellraiser 3 or Hellraiser 4. I can't remember right now. But he is no stranger to special effects. He's done a lot of special effects work. Child's Play is another one that he did some special effects for. So this is a guy where it's a name that pops up often enough for you to know. He's not Tom Savini, certainly, but or like a Carlo Rambaldi, but he's up there as far as special effects artists, and that's why I think like that brain effect really works. That's why I think that my favorite effect, I said it was my favorite scene, coming out of Jesse works so well. Like that is a great effect, and like we saw it on a big screen, high definition television, and it was great. It held up really, really well.
I find myself, because I've read a lot about like how the director is saying that he like that, I can't remember his name right now, but saying that he was like had no idea that this was meant as like a gay story or whatever. I mean, you literally had somebody come out of somebody, like my brother in Christ. Like, read the room.
Yeah. It's bad. It's bad. And the thing is, like, if you actually like watch him in these interviews, he does seem innocent. Like he seems like the kind of guy who just would not have picked up on any of this stuff. Like it just he grew up in on an Amish farm somewhere and had never met a gay person ever.
I mean,
he seems like innocent in that way. Like he was just here to do the job, and this is what he did. This was the job.
Right.
And I didn't want to say ignorant. I didn't want to say ignorant because ignorance.
Ignorant has a bad implication.
Right. It has a bad connotation. And even if it's not intentional. But yeah, innocence I think is the right way to describe him. Shoulder, was it Robin Shoulder?
Okay.
Yeah. So for me, that's really where it's at when it comes to special effects in this movie. And as far as kills, Coach Snyder, I love everything that sets up that kill. Being attacked by balls, being tied up in the shower, being spanked. It all to me is exactly what this movie's about, which is it's how gay it is. Like, it is really fucking gay, and that's why this movie works for me. And I think that's the one kill where it's like, nah, this is really gay, and they should have put more of the gayness into into it. It's
always put more gay.
Yeah, always. So unless anyone has anything they want to add, we're gonna get into rating the movie. Okay, awesome. So we're coming in right on time here. I am so happy. When Daniel and I aren't bullshitting with each other, apparently we can just like get done on time. I fucking love this. So as is customary, we never rate any movie against another movie. We're only rating them against themselves, because movies should be viewed as for what they are, not for what they aren't. And despite the fact that we have said numerous times that we think that A Nightmare on Elm Street, the original, is the superior movie, this movie is this movie. It's not the original. It's not part 3. It's certainly not the remake. So we also give the opportunity to our guest hosts to throw out the metric that we're going to use to rate, because every movie is rated against itself. So we don't use stars, right? So, Steph, do you have?
I don't. Ish can do it. I know he has a good.
Okay, Ish, do you have a metric?
Well, I mean, how do we not use exploding parakeets?
That is it.
I was going to say leather daddies, so
No, because then we start talking about a lot of leather daddies, and I can't,
Yeah.
exploding.
That were we?
Yeah, it's a different. Then it becomes an adult documentary.
So Stephanie, out of a possible 5 exploding parakeets, how many exploding parakeets do you give A Nightmare on Elm Street 2?
I mean, I'm gonna go 2.5.
Okay.
Because it was trying to say something. It was, even if this guy wants to deny or whatever all he wants. It is progressive. It is. Mm-hmm. It does have something to say. It is implying something in a time where it was really difficult to do something, but the writing is just so bad.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's bad. So I can't forgive that. So I'm gonna go 2.5 exploding parakeets, but the bottom half.
Okay, good.
Where the cherry bomb would have gone in, that's the half.
Right. Up its rectum.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So the ass half.
We want the bottom half.
That'll teach him to shit on your car.
Ish, how many exploding parakeets do you give A Nightmare on Elm Street 2?
It's out of 5, right?
Out of 5. Okay, yeah. Now, unless we do have the option here, we don't take it often, we don't use it lightly, but you can give it what Daniel refers to as the gold star and give it 6 out of 5.
Well, no, I'm not.
But this is very rare.
This movie does not deserve that.
No, and I'm not looking to blow up an aviary. So we're gonna stay with that one. I'm currently between a 3.5 and a 4.
Okay.
And I know that may seem like ridiculously high.
Very generous.
For Steph, but I'm actually okay. As I've said many times on this show, starting with Sleepaway Camp, I love me a bad movie. So I'm always gonna be.
You like movies that are bad good.
Yeah, that most people are just like, oh, that movie's bad. To the point where if I actually think a movie is bad, what I will say is that movie is not good. Like, I won't even say it's bad. I will say it is not good. So, I'm between 3.5 and 4 because I think the writing's crap. But I think everything else in this movie is trying to to do something
Right,
different
I agree.
and elevate it. And I think that, almost within the mission statement of what we're doing with this rating, which is rating it, as itself.
Right.
If this wasn't a Freddy movie, right? If this was, it is. So I know I'm playing fast.
Yeah, it is even in the title, Freddy's Revenge.
Right. But if this wasn't part of the whole series, right? Like as a standalone movie, there wouldn't be the baggage. There wouldn't be any of the other stuff. So looking at it just through that lens, that's why I'm inclined to be a little bit 3.5, 4, because it could, I think, stand on its own. I think a lot of the reasons that it gets looked at negatively is just because it is in the context of this bigger series, aside from all the issues and the problems that we've discussed, right? So with that said, I'm gonna go with a 4. And I'm gonna go with a 4 only because I was actually almost gonna go 3.5, but I'm gonna go 4 because I feel like this movie is deservedly getting more credit of late than it has.
That's true.
And I think it's, like we were saying earlier, many people skip over it. Many people are like, part 1, part 3. And I think it does deserve that second look. It deserves to be appreciated a little bit more than it traditionally is by the world at large. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give it a 4.
I think I'm falling in Ish's camp here, where I think that there is a lot wrong with this movie, but there's more right than there is wrong. My inclination is to give it 3 exploding parakeets. The problem with that is that that's what I want to do, but there is an additional exploding parakeet that needs to be paid attention to, and that's the one that actually explodes in the movie. So I'm gonna include that exploding parakeet into my score, and it's going to be 4 exploding parakeets, because how can you ignore that exploding parakeet? And because it's being rated, if it's being rated against itself, it's like, well, fuck it, there is an exploding parakeet. That's how amazing and awful this movie is. That fuck, there's an exploding parakeet. So you have to calculate it into the score. So here's the thing: you have to acknowledge the exploding parakeet in the room. When we calculate this, right, 2.5, 4, all right, it comes out to 3.5 exploding parakeets, and I think that is where this movie should be.
Yeah,
is right there. I can certainly live with that.
Yes.
So, on behalf of everyone here at Shiver, I want to thank you, Steph. I want to thank you, Ish. Thank you for being here with me tonight. I really needed this tonight. I had a root canal done earlier today.
Are you serious?
And yeah. And 2 weeks ago, I
asked him if he wanted to cancel. He said no.
Yeah, I was really looking forward to it. But my afternoon was not great. So I am so glad that we did this, and I had a couple of laughs, and we got gay, and I fucking love that.
It's true.
That was fantastic. So thank you so much. Please make sure that you follow Ish, you follow Stephanie. Their Instagram and Twitter handles are up here now. Stephanie, is there anything that you want to promote?
No, I'm just here. I'm just here for a good time.
You're just here for a good time.
Listen, I'll promote for Stephanie. If you're looking for somebody to host a hell of an event, hit her up, Stephanie. F.U. I mean, you will not be disappointed in the slightest.
Yes, Stephanie is not just because she's my wife, but she is an incredible event planner. So you can follow her on Instagram.
I'm super happy to throw Halloween parties. They're right around the corner.
And who better to throw a Halloween party than a gay man? So she will do a good job. She will.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Ish, what would you like to promote?
The usual. But let me tell you, we're midway through season 6 right now. Take a listen if you haven't.
I have to say, not this last week's episode, but the one before, Darian hated everything. I know that he's sometimes can be a little bit of a hater, but he was on a different level that day.
Well, but then this week I came back and I feel like I upped it by just hating Beyonce, and now I'm marked for.
I always support you in your hate of Beyonce. So
but I feel like now there's like a fatwa on me from the Bay.
Maybe that's how this podcast gets like some notoriety for like hating Beyonce. Tag Beyonce, tag it, like hashtag it when you post.
Hashtag Beyonce.
The Bay Hive will come after you.
Exactly,
yeah.
But they'll still listen, and that's all that matters.
That's all I care. I just want the downloads.
Yeah.
And thank you both. This is the first time I've ever done the show with both of you. Obviously, I miss you, Daniel. It would have been great to do this with you as well. But I love the fact that this is always going to be true. This is always going to be true. But I love just hanging out here with two really good friends of mine, and it was a treat and a blast to do it with this movie.
I'm so glad because I love having you on. I haven't podcasted a lot with Stephanie, but she's incredibly smart and witty and funny. So I would love to have her on more often. Unfortunately, because we're in the same house and we have kids, it's very rare for something like this to happen. Yeah, so
I normally have like a 15-month-old like permanently attached to my body. So.
He could take a page out of the last episode where we did Dead Alive, where mom trauma was part of that movie. So thank you both so much. For those of you who have maybe wondered, no one has. This episode is technically 99.5 because this should have been episode 100.
Oh,
but we're planning something special for episode 100, and we can't do that. We can't do that without Daniel.
Right.
So I'm very hopeful that the next episode is not going to be 99.5.5. That the next episode will be episode 100, and we have something special planned. So hopefully we can get Ish and Andrew and a bunch of the guys that have been on here with us, Ralph, and do something really interesting. Our friend Hunger, who has been on a couple of times, is planning something with Daniel. So hopefully this is going to be a big deal for us, not for anyone else, but for us, it'll be nice. Yeah. So that's fantastic. So once again, thank you, on behalf of all of us here on Shiver. Fright you very much.